see it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it would. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll do that because it's easier for me to be able to see it there. Give me 1 second to put it in the chat. Here we go. For everyone. There. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm focusing on this text and where it first started playing a place in my work. For those of you who don't know, I should have started with this. I am Amy Bolotin. I am the director of Francis Jacobson Early Childhood Center at Temple Israel. I have been working in early childhood education for a really long time, 30 years. And most of that in Jewish early childhood education. So about 15 years ago, I was working in a program in which they brought to us a sort of a belief, a set of guidelines for working with children and for learning together in a Jewish setting. And these are 7 key principles of Jewish thought, values. We call them lenses through which we can view our work, not just with children, but with parents, with colleagues. And it underlines how our Jewish values align with what we believe about how children learn. And I'm not going to give you all the 7 values, the 7 lenses, but one of them is B'Tselem Elohim, which simply put honors the dignity and the divine in each child, in each person. And in a classroom setting, this is really important. We want to know who the children are in our classroom. We need to know what their strengths are, and we need to know their challenges, where they need to grow. Teachers in classrooms also need to be balancing those individual needs with the needs of the group, of the children. From September to June or September to August, we have a list, a schedule, goals for children, where we want them to get to. And it's our responsibility to get them all there in some unified fashion as a classroom group. We're also building community values when we're doing that. So balancing the needs of the individual with the needs of the group is a constant tension that we manage, and it's not easy. And as directors of programs where we're supervising staff, we also need to be keeping the individual goals of our teachers and the values and goals of the whole program in some sort of balance. That is not an easy or simple task. It's very rewarding, very exciting. It's not easy. So these 7 values help keep us in that balance. And I think B'Tselem Elohim, focusing on the individual divine, the individual uniqueness in each person, is where we start in our process of meeting people where they're at, which is the essence of education. And I think the essence of working in any sort of group situation. So this nugget, like in staying in a moment where you're in conversation with somebody else, there's a problem you're trying to solve, there's supervision you're trying to do, or just getting a task done together in collaboration. And whenever there's friction, it's usually because agendas are not together, or you don't have shared values, or you don't have a common language. And returning to this idea of seeing that person across from you as unique, as essentially as important and divine, or there's some spark in them that is the essence of God or goodness, is a place to start that helps the relationship be in balance. In a classroom, that looks like taking a moment to hear a child tell you what they need. It could be a child who's having a temper tantrum, and you need to just stop and listen, or stop and let them go through whatever, have their feelings, is what we say in our early childhood world. So when these lenses were introduced to me many years ago, this is where I started to sort of think about how this really lives daily in our lives, and not just in the educational world, but in everything we do. just has always resonated for me. Um, and there are a couple of other moments along the way that really sparked me to continue digging deeper into why that resonates with me and how that plays out in our work. And one moment came when I was an assistant director. And I had a boss I really liked. I worked with her well. She had a lot to teach me. But one day she said to me, and this was in front of one or two other people, she said, "You know, you're too soft on your teachers." I was supervising about 18, 20 teachers. It was a big school. She said, "You're too soft on your teachers." And I thought, well, that's something. It caught me off guard. Didn't surprise me, but it did catch me off guard, and it really made me think about the ways in which I was trying to get teachers to grow and how we go about that. And that is actually one of the moments when I started to think maybe I do want to become a director of a program and not just an assistant director, because that's when I began to see how I could do things differently than she did. But that softness that she was talking about, I thought about it and thought about it, and I thought, that's not a weakness. Because I have a different way of approaching teachers in order to get them to do what they do or what I want them to do or what the program thinks they should do. If I walk into a classroom and say, you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this, that might work for a small portion of them, but it's not going to work for everybody. And if they don't understand why they need to do this or they're not on board with it, it's not going to last long. And I think the same goes for when we're working with children. You know, clearly there are rules and boundaries we need to have to keep people safe. And then after those rules are established and we have some common guidelines, we need the flexibility to make sure that everybody's getting to those places they need to go on their own. So that was sort of one really important moment in my learning journey. More recently, I started thinking about B'Tselem Elohim because I was talking in all these different situations around work with some teachers, with some parents, and with other people in the organization. And a lot of these conversations were around having people do some things we need to get them to do, and it wasn't working. And one person started off a meeting with a whole group of seniors, staff, not just senior staff, but staff. And what he said was that he figured out he had done something wrong. He had issued some information that everybody else needed to know, but he didn't think, and it didn't land well. It caused a lot of Sturm and Drang and tension and friction, and people were anxious about some changes that were coming. And he stepped back and he took some feedback from someone, and he came back to this next meeting and he said, "I know what I did wrong. I wasn't thinking about what each of you, the changes I was making would impact the actual work that you do on a daily basis. And you need to know that before you can be comfortable going along with the changes. So now I'm going to tell you that. I've had many conversations between then and now, and it feels very different. The changes we're about to make feel different because each person knows how it's going to impact the work that they do. That's information, but it's also an approach. It's stepping back and taking the perspective of another person and thinking, oh, I get it. I need to step over there and see how this affects you." To me, that's B'Tselem Elohim. Taking a moment, stepping back, making space for that other person, and appreciating the importance of what that person does and how important it is for you to understand them and make space for them in order for both of you to move along. I think about that in terms of supervising people, in terms of communal dynamics, organizational psychology, if you will, and how important that is to think about. I'm going to stop for a minute. Oh, Margot has her hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, is it Rabbi or Amy or?
Just Amy is fine. No
Okay,
rabbinical training whatsoever.
Amy,
Yes.
in which you just recounted, I'm going to ask you whether the example is that we're made in God's image, or whether as you interact with your staff, that the superior and the subordinate, or the director and teachers, were made in each other's image.
Say
From
more.
what you were just sharing,
Mhm.
it didn't, it seemed to be a back and forth.
Um, I was specifically saying that each person is created with the divine in them.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm thinking about what you just said about that they have something of each other in them. Is that how you put
A
it?
certain reciprocity
Reciprocity.
or allowance for the other, which isn't necessarily totally reflective or mirroring the superior in the directives or the format, or however it is established. It seems like there seems to be a certain amount of allowance to grow and reflect from the interchange with yes, so
I think the
I
if
might be mishearing you,
that's okay.
or
No, I
escaping your
think you're
intent.
no, I was specifically talking about one person, subordinate or not, making space or noticing, acknowledging, appreciating the divine uniqueness in each person. I think that that is a foundation which gets us to an ability to be better able to have space for reciprocity. Does that make sense?
So if let me just play it back to you.
Hmm.
If we're each, let me just take my video off for a moment. If we're each, both superior and teachers, are created in the divine image, then that allows for a more productive interchange, recognizing that we're each. Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
for
and
the
I think one
clarification.
of the things that might help clarify it even more is that we don't always listen. I want to talk about the superior versus subordinate part of that conversation, um, because in early childhood education, well, in my thoughts about it, is there a hierarchy of roles? Yes. I am the director of the school. There are teachers who are very experienced, who are lead teachers. There are assistant teachers. There are children. There are parents. Certain people have greater scope of responsibility and authority, but everybody has some responsibility and some authority. So it isn't a straight sort of up and down hierarchical system. And when we talk about our curriculum and our educational philosophy, we talk about co-constructing learning and co-constructing curriculum. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens, a lot of communal collaborative work. And in order for that to happen, one has to be able to feel on an even level. And I don't mean that in a power situation or authoritative situation, although I think it does exist. I mean in a relational sense. We're in a learning environment. We at FJACC, I see your hand raised, Nancy. I'll get to you in a second. Talk about I just lost that phrase that I had in my head. Nancy, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that I think what you're saying is why we study Torah, is why we study the Bible. Because we want to have a relationship with God ultimately. And, well, as I said, first of all, your hands are so beautiful in terms of reflecting on how you see yourself and where you see yourself and how you are with people. Um, and that's what the story of Ruth is. You know, you're you're with those children, you're with those teachers, you're there for them and they're there for you really. And you're together in this manifestation of holiness. And it's not that everyone gets it. It's really, that's not so important. It's what's important is that there is always growth, and as you redo everything year after year and grow with it and have relationships that grow, it fits into why we have this holiday, actually, to reflect on how the oneness that we want to create with others, where, yeah, I guess we could say God is always above, right? But we are in the work, we're all equal.
Yes, and God is always above, but B'Tselem Elohim, I think, my interpretation, and I'm sure many others, B'Tselem Elohim brings him down into the everyday. Him, they, she brings God down into the everyday. It brings God into our lives, and it has the potential to support our efforts to be whoever it is that we're trying to be. I'm hoping that that is good people. We talk about our work in early childhood education as raising good citizens. That's my goal. I want children and families who come through our school to continue on in the world in a way in which they feel supported, but also they are able to support others, and that doing good things becomes a thing that they do. My hope, and what sort of spawned me to agree to this, to the teaching, to doing this today, and then thinking about why B'Tselem Elohim, is that if there are any small ways in which we can bring this sort of idea of seeing the divine in another person into outside of early childhood education, outside of our school, outside of our classrooms, into a simple interaction, that repeated over and over and over again is only going to be better for the world. Simple acts of daily acts of kindness, if you will. That to me is B'Tselem Elohim, because in order to do a daily act of kindness, a small act of kindness, you need to set aside something internally, essentially yourself, or your own needs, and take a moment and see someone else. One of the first things that someone said to me, the most impactful things that someone said to me when I started working in early childhood, it was the end of my first year as an assistant teacher. I just started graduate school. And it was a parent of a little girl who wasn't in my classroom. She was in the classroom next door to mine, but we spent a lot of time together. And the mom wrote me a note and she said, "You've given us the greatest gift. You've seen my child. You see her, who she is and as she is." This happened to be a very shy little girl who was having a hard time, almost selectively mute. Never forgotten that. And that is essentially the mission of our work, is to see each child. So the times I have the hardest with this essence is when I'm driving. I'll be very honest. I hate being stuck in traffic. I'm impatient to get where I'm going. I get frustrated and I say things when I'm by myself in the car that I would never think to say to another person face to face. And it brings out the most impatient, worst, cranky side of me. So sometimes I kind of coach myself, take a deep breath. You have nowhere to be in this immediate moment. You're gonna get to where you're going. It's okay. It's
Well, don't you think that really, those times in Torah and times in the Bible where you're saying, what is God saying to these people? Why is God, it's like God actually is driving through what we are doing and is just so upset at us, for
yeah, yeah. So that's
all
my
of
hard time.
our,
I That's
in
my hard
quotes,
time
really
to tell
believe
him.
that God, but I really believe that God, God was at creation. God is at the creation of every single one of us. But God leaves us here, actually. Maybe God is driving through, but God is not stopping to say, and you know what? You should stop saying those words, or you should stop being this. We were given, that is what we were given. We were given that divine spark to spread it as we can, whether it's in education, whether it's with someone who we dearly love, who needs our help, with whatever we do.
Hmm.
And it's up to us. God is not there to like, hey, say, hey, look what you do. But God is there to say, spread what you do, which
Yeah.
is what you do with your hands.
Okay. Thank you. Ruth had an interesting comment. I heard humility in that example too. His hearing and his own in his owning his error. Humility, another one of my favorite tzimtzum, favorite meaty, juicy Jewish texts, lenses, values. The idea of I'm not going to go into tzimtzum right now. I could do a whole nother 2 hours on that one. But humility is really important. You have to be able to, in order to first see the divine in another and then make space for them. That means withdrawing a little bit, pulling back a little bit. It doesn't mean so much that they take up more space, but that you're just creating some space for there to be some common meeting ground. I want to go back to talking about why I'd been thinking about this so much lately, and the interactions I'm seeing around me, and um, I think we do a really good job in early childhood education of sort of living the values. We try to. We think about them certainly every day because we're working with children and teaching them and teaching, learning from them and from parents and from each other. And I literally come out of the classrooms, out of the school walls, and walk around the building or go to a conference or a workshop or, excuse me. Um, I'm often in spaces where I'm thinking with, talking with, listening to other people in positions of leadership, whether it's supervising one person or 50 or more. And um, there's always a moment where we sort of get to the kvetching time. Why can't I get the people I'm supervising to do this? Why can't they just understand what it is? I've put the information out there. They know the rules. They know their job descriptions, and it's just not working. And hearing the default as a manager or supervisor is to sort of say you need to get more strict, you need to tighten the reins, you need to they've got one more chance and then they're out. And I kind of take a deep breath and I think, oh, we've just lost. We just went off the B'Tselem Elohim train. And it it took me a while to think of it in that context. It used to be um, you know, what is it that they're really complaining about? Are they really complaining that is the person truly incompetent or not able to do their job? Let me not change that. Not incompetent, but Is there a situation going where this person really isn't in the right job and can't do it? Or have they not gotten the information and feedback they need in order to grow, in order to meet the expectations? And that's a really important conversation to have. And I think about how this notion of B'Tselem Elohim, if we had it in everybody's labor agreements, in their workplace handbook, employee handbook, or leadership handbook, if it always started with that, would we be able to be better managers? Would we be able to be in better positions to guide people to succeed in their jobs? And this is really what the nugget of what got me thinking here is, like, how do we help people be better at what we want them to be doing and we think that they want to be doing? I mean, nobody wants to be doing a bad job. Maybe somebody doesn't want to be doing the job they're doing, but that's different. And that's a coaching out experience. But even to coach somebody out of a job, you need to be able to see them for who they are. And that's B'Tselem Elohim. Understanding that this person has a desire to succeed, has a desire to be good, has a desire to be seen by everyone else as competent, as able to contribute in some way. That's where I'm at with B'Tselem Elohim. I think about it all the time. And it helps get me back when I'm moving too far into the kvetching mode or too overwhelmed or can't figure out the next step. That's one of my fallback perspectives and lenses. Kristen says, I can definitely see echoes in myself of, oh, that was about the car, the incident of the car. All right. We co-construct things at FJACC. We talk about it. What is everybody else thinking right now?
So I'll just add that when I was having great difficulty in a work situation with an adult, someone said something to me that was really transformative, not just for that person, but for people in the future, which was, even in somebody that you really find hard to work with, that you can't stand, there's always going to be something that you need to find to admire about that person. And I thought that really was helpful. Look for something that you can admire in that person. And they gave me insight about the person that I didn't know and that I really admired. And I thought that was really transformative. And every once in a while, when I've asked someone also in a work situation, what is your strength? And they can't answer, that is an incredibly sad statement, that if they can't see that divinity in themselves, what have all the rest of us humans done to that person? But mainly it's the first one. It's really like, in everybody there's something to admire. It's on us to find it.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Sure.
A very wise man once said in a workshop I was in, we were talking about family engagement and how do we, this was specifically in early childhood education. He still is the head of school at a Jewish day school in another state. He was talking about family engagement and he was talking about building relationships with parents in order to be able to engage them in any way. We were talking about the family engagement is a big, broad category of thinking and action. And what he said was, as we were talking about building relationships with parents, he said, complaints are concerns, and concerns are opportunities for growth and change. And that may seem like a little off to the side and not connected, but to me, that the essence of that is B'Tselem Elohim. If you can see somebody's complaint coming to you with a complaint and hear the complaint, and then think, the next question is, what are they worried about? What are they concerned about? It totally flips the path of the conversation. It creates space for the person receiving the complaint to think about who the person complaining is and what they might be thinking about. What are they worried about? What are they anxious about? It's often something related to their child, or they're afraid of something, or they're worried that something isn't going to happen the right way. And then the conversation becomes a problem-solving, collaborative effort to create some kind of shift or growth. And it might be that, if you're thinking head of school, parent dynamic, the head of school might have a different sense then of what the conversation with the teachers or anybody else in that orbit. It might shift the parent's sense of need, of what they need, of what they're upset about. If the conversation allows space for their worry or their concern to come out and be voiced, then that shifts and we move into collaborative work together. And somebody changes, somebody grows a little bit, tiny little bit, and then the relationship, which is key here, becomes stronger, the base for that relationship. There becomes space for trust. There becomes space for collaboration. All because we hear the complaint as a concern instead of kvetching or finger wagging or a demand to change something or to do it differently. The onus isn't just on the person receiving it, it becomes a group effort. Those were incredible words of wisdom that have helped me time and time again when I have my own sort of personal moments when I get an email from a parent or somebody comes into my office and sits down and starts complaining about something. I even did it to myself the other day. I was complaining and I didn't really realize I was complaining, and I was looking at the person I was talking to and she was just very patiently nodding, and then I was like, okay, that was a concern. I'm worried about something. What am I worried about? And then I shifted and I moved on. That's a lot of years of practice of thinking about complaints as concern to be able to do that. Any other thoughts? We're a quiet group. If you were my staff, I would volunteer somebody to speak now or to offer a thought. Wait, I just had another thought about B'Tselem Elohim. It's gone. It's too early in the morning, and I actually slept. How many of you have been up all night? Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Anybody want to think about how B'Tselem Elohim might make its way into your day? Ruth.
I'm a chaplain at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, and I also am an educator who educates people who want to be chaplains. So we're all about seeing the divine in every person. And part of that is we have a commitment to doing a spiritual assessment of every patient who's there longer than 3 days. And it's to find out what's important to them, whether they have the support already that they need, or how we can facilitate that support for them. Because it is a family crisis. It's not just the child who's in the hospital, it's their parents, And the parents are usually in some sort of spiritual struggle because their child's in the hospital. And if the child gets better, the issue is the struggle is resolved in many ways. So we need to be present and see what value they place, where they place value, so that we can support them in that. And to me, that it's all about seeing that spark of the divine, and being seen, and not just being told everything's going to be okay. We never tell people things are good, but we're not qualified to do that, first of all. So that is how I think about it, and how it's part of my everyday world, both with my own students, and they're also seeing patients. So them also seeing me do the same thing that they do is meaningful for all of us too. Thanks.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I have
I-
something to say along that line before you continue. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I don't
that's
want to interrupt. Is because I wanted to bring it up before. That was the emotional part of it, like the tears. Like I'm sure in what she was just talking about, that I find divineness in our tears, that it's joy and tears of emotion that are so powerful. So maybe you can comment on that related to that. So
I think that's beautiful. I think, yes. What I was going to say to Ruth is just how important and challenging, but how deeply important and spiritual it is to be able to sit with someone in their pain, and there isn't anything you can do to make it go away, and how valuable it is to share that space. Um, it is profoundly deep and wonderful work. And I think it is similar in our work in early childhood education. When I mentioned earlier, a child having a temper tantrum is, I mean, in a sort of baseline sensory sense, it's sensory overload, and just, um, life is just too much, and it all comes out in one moment. But anybody worth their weight as a teacher, if children, knows you got to write it out. You can't tell a child to stop having a temper tantrum. You can tell a child to stop crying, and you might be able to scare them into not crying and holding it in, but that's not serving anybody well. It's certainly not serving the child, in order to be able to understand and to release tension, to understand their emotions and understand their feelings. We do that all the time in our work with children. And then again, this is the balance between meeting the needs of one versus meeting the needs of group. A newer, younger teacher will want a child to sort of get their act together and get over it and move on, so that the group can get to the next point, whether they're coming in from the playground or sitting down to lunch or coming to circle time. In the end, the group will be stronger if that child's needs are met in that moment, and their feelings are acknowledged, their feelings are given space, and someone is there as they're going through it and getting to the other side. This is taking me down a whole nother road of mismatch and repair, and the power of seeing through someone being hurt and coming through to the other side, and in a relationship-based way. If you go through that experience with them and you repair whatever injury, the emotional injury there was, they are stronger and your relationship is stronger. I really believe that B'Tselem Elohim is in all of those moments when we're in connection, in relationship with someone else, and that we can only do that if we appreciate the uniqueness and the divine in another person, because then we're giving them value. We're honoring that they have value in this world.
I just had another thought about it. I'm not sure if I can be like a coherent, but I'll try. I know we've been talking mostly about the human relationships, and which is correct, and my day is all I'm with people all the time, the grown-ups and the kids. Oh, and hello everybody. By the way, I'm one of Amy's teachers at the preschool. But I also just thought that if we believe that God is in everything, including ourselves, like we're part of God and God is part of us, but we're part of the world, part of our surroundings, then this kind of spark you can find in other people, and you have to appreciate it, but also in all the other living things around us and nature, and yeah, the kind of you build this relationship with the world around you as well, and
Mhm.
it helps to see that spark in humans. Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you, Irina. Absolutely. I mean, how many of us refuel or reboot by taking a walk outside in the woods, along the beach, in the middle of a city? That vibrancy, that energy that we gather from everybody else around us. For some people, it's the buzz and hum of being in a city, and for some people, it's out in the woods at the ocean, hearing the birds, even at 4 o'clock in the morning, as annoying as that can be. It's truly a miracle. We are reaching the end of our hour, I think. Any other thoughts? It's been so wonderful. Yes, Susan.
I think your comment about how to take complaints or to turn a complaint into an opportunity, it makes me think about how often when I hear a complaint, I take it personally. It's the first thing I do.
We all do.
I think it's we get defensive, and then there's no place really to go with that. And this idea that you brought up about um, seeing it, taking it immediately away from that somebody's complaining about me or something I've done into a concern about the other person, what their concern is, just kind of unwires that automatic reflex that makes you take that personally, which I think it's it's going to be very helpful for me. Thank you.
It was truly one of the most impactful things anybody's ever said to me in my work. And it doesn't always work, but it often does. And it just helps me wait. Just take a pause. Everybody's got that fight or flight response when somebody's coming at them with a whole lot of intense feedback. And if you pause, take a deep breath, let your adrenaline run through you, and then think, oh, they're worried about something.
Yeah, it's not about me.
It's not about me.
This is
This
not
is not
about me.
about me.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity to maybe change something, or to have someone or something grow and change in a different way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy.
I think when we say we are children of God, that what we're saying is that we're always learners. That as you teach these little ones, which is so joyous and so fulfilling, in our everyday life, we have to remember that we can learn just as you teach those little ones, and the teachers teach, and the assistants teach, and your presence teaches. That's who we are as well. And if we want to, go to those moments of godliness, we have to learn.
I would only add to that we are all also teachers. Yes, we are all learning all the time, and we are all capable of teaching others as well, and even in the smallest of ways. Thank you, everyone, for talking about the divine in each of us this morning. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you, Amy.
Amy, you did a great job.
Thank you, Beth. I'm so happy to see some people I know here.
We're
We
so
all
happy to
did
be
that.
here.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let's say hi. We only caught the end of that, but that was extremely beautiful. And thank you, as the person who, you know, begged you to do this. Thank you so much. So everyone,
You didn't even beg me this year. I just did it.
you're amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We will be starting the service in exactly 11 minutes, but we'll take a little bit of break. So feel free to get your coffee. For those who've been up all night, I'm impressed with you. And we'll be joined with some more folks who are ready to pray. We'll see you in a few.